Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. Welcome to the Made in New York Animation Project Incentivized Industry Access event. My name is Natasha, and I will be one of your hosts for today alongside my incredible co-host, Shane.
Thank you, Natasha. Hey, everyone. I'm Shane, and I'm an animator here at TAP. Today's group is scheduled to run from 4 o'clock to 5:30 p.m. But before we begin, let's review some information about this webinar.
All right, let's do it. So many of you have been here before, but as a reminder, this group is operating in webinar format. So that means that as attendees, you will not be able to turn on your video or microphone during this event, but you are encouraged to use the Q&A feature to engage with our guest speaker and ask questions. Don't worry, you were counted in attendance as soon as you logged on to this Zoom. So you do not need to follow up with us regarding your attendance. If you lose connection, because we know technical difficulties happen, you might get kicked off and rejoin. Just try to rejoin as soon as possible. But you were still counted as attending when you signed on, so you will still receive your incentive even if you get disconnected.
Thanks, Natasha. I'm super excited for this industry access event. So let's take a look at today's goals. Number one, we got the opening ritual, which we'll get into a moment. And two, we have the TAP Creed. Number three, we'll have some programs and incentives information. And then four, the main event, we will speak to our guest speaker, Dominic Badesi. We will have number five, a Q&A after for Dominic. And then we will finish up with a closing ritual.
Indeed. So let's get started with our opening ritual. So as you know, Shane, and probably a lot of people here, in every TAP group, we start with an opening ritual to help us really check in with each other, check in with ourselves, and ground us in the space for today. So for today's opening ritual, please share in the Q&A, what are you hoping to gain from today's presentation? You all signed up, you all made the time and space in your schedule to be here today. So what are you hoping to leave with? Are there questions or information or, just some general inspiration that you're hoping to walk away with? So please share in the Q&A. I'm sure we've got them coming in already. What are you hoping to gain from today's presentation? Please share your responses in the Q&A feature.
Lamar Sacco says inspiration.
Awesome.
Great answer.
We've got Nina, new information and inspiration. Red heart.
More inspiration. Cool. Shyla says some knowledge I can use in my future. Absolutely.
New skills from Sahar. Awesome.
Alani White says how storyboards are turned into real life.
Oh, very
Dominic's a storyboard artist, so you'll be seeing some of that.
Very cool. We've got more inspiration for animation and film in general, helpful art skills to go all the way. I love that. And hoping to gain new information or perspective.
Awesome. Tiffany says insight. Candace says hoping to gain portfolio tips.
Great. Joni, I love animation. Perfect. This is the perfect place to be if you love animation. Harris, working on your portfolio and new skills, and similarly, knowledge and skills for the future.
Carolina says, I would love to learn more about Dominic's career journey, job application process, etc.
Great. New skills and creativity. And Matthew, more skills that I could use either in high school, college. Oh, I lost that. They're coming in so fast, either in high school, college, or just overall in life, as well as life lessons. Awesome. And let's take a couple more before we move on. These are great. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, these are great answers. Hugo says, expanding my knowledge of animation and digital creativity outside of architecture. So cool, coming from an architecture background.
Very cool. And we've already got questions coming in for our guest speaker, which is great. So these are great. Thank you so much for, making the time and space again today in your busy schedules, learning how to break into the animation industry. Amazing. Thank you, Christian. And thank you all for just being here with, open minds and open hearts and coming in to be inspired. We hope that leaving today, you will achieve those goals that you came in here with. So next, I think we're going to go over our TAP Creed. Is that right, Shane?
Yes, we're going to go over our TAP Creed next. So TAP Creed is something that we do in all of our groups, all of our seminars. So step one, or number one on the TAP Creed, is we show respect. We are a team of individuals from different backgrounds and experiences with a shared interest in learning. We live up to the same expectations as we would in person. We mute ourselves when we're not speaking in order for all voices to be clearly heard.
Thanks, Shane. Number two, we take care of our technology. We utilize our technology with care and professionalism in order to support the learning experiences of everyone who attends.
Thanks, Natasha. Number three, we focus. We have a lot to learn. All our attention is focused on the group. We do our best to limit distractions around us, and we wear headphones if possible.
We participate. We are engaged in the group. We abide by the creed when asking questions and sharing our creative work.
And number five, we own the content. This is our group. This is our opportunity to learn more about the animation industry and express ourselves creatively.
And number six, we attend group. So you have all done that. Thank you for being here. Your voices and ideas are valued, and we attend each group we are registered for. We log into the group on time and we stay until the end. And our Zoom name matches our registration names. That's very important. All right, so now we're going to take a moment to review some information about our incentives. As everyone knows, this is an incentivized webinar. So how much will you be paid? Attendees who registered for this webinar will be paid $10, but only registered attendees are eligible to receive that incentive. So you must have filled out that registration form in order to receive your incentive. Incentive cards will be mailed out by about April 1st. And so you should receive your card in the mail by April 9th. Please be patient, but you can always reach out to us with questions at the email address on the screen. It is incentives@theanimationproject.org.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that important information about incentives, Natasha. Now, I'm so excited to welcome our guest speaker for today, Dominic Badesi. Dominic is a Brooklyn-based award-winning storyboard artist, illustrator, and 2D animator. Welcome, Dominic.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me, Tap, and thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I appreciate y'all very much. I know I can't see my wonderful peers and guests here, but I'm thinking about y'all as I'm speaking. So hello to you as well. And yes, I technically am Brooklyn-based. However, I am currently also in West Palm Beach, Florida. I'll get into that more when we just talk about my specific career journey. But I do work for the great state of New York. So without further ado, I will just begin the presentation. So, oh, let me skip for a second. Perfect. There we go. A little loop in the third background for my loop in the third fans. There we go. All right. So yes, as mentioned, my name is Dominic Badesi, and I specialize in storyboard work and also a little bit of animating here and there. This wonderful picture of myself in front of a lovely waterfall in Croatia. I highly suggest traveling as often and as far as you can. I know when the budget calls for it, traveling is not cheap these days, but I was born in Cleveland, Ohio. Shout out to my Cleveland folks. But when my folks moved to Cleveland and they gave birth to me in February, they realized how cold it was up there. So they moved back to Jamaica. My family's from Jamaica originally, and I spent some years there as an infant / toddler. And when anybody asks me where I'm from, I say West Palm Beach, Florida, because I've lived in West Palm Beach, Florida since the young and tender age of 4 years old. So from 4 up until I moved to New York to begin my career, which was in my early 20s, I was living in West Palm Beach, Florida. And great state, lovely Sunshine State. And yes, as mentioned, I'm a first generation American. Both myself and my sister were born in the States, but we have roots in Jamaica. And while I was living in New York and still do commute back and forth to New York from time to time, I was living in the wonderful borough known as Brooklyn. So shout out to my Canarsie residents out there. I'm not about to shout out the L train though. The L train gave me many woes, but we don't need to talk about that in this particular presentation. So my main profession, I recently wrapped up a contract with Titmouse. Titmouse has been the animation studio that I've worked with ever since I began having a professional career in the animation industry. Shout out to Titmouse for holding it down for your boy. I began working with them in 2019 while I was studying for my master's at the School of Visual Arts. I'll get into that later on as well. But two projects that I've worked on were TOTS, Tiny Ones Transport Service, and Pubstruction. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Titmouse, but you may have heard of their other shows such as Big Mouth, which was a huge hit on Netflix, Fairfax, which I believe was on Amazon. Don't quote me on that one. They did some work with Jay-Z in his music video. So Titmouse is a pretty well-renowned smaller studio with their headquarters based in Los Angeles. And they do have studios that operate out of Chelsea, New York, as well as Canada. So yeah, I began doing work for TOTS. I actually interned on the show TOTS. Great show to kind of begin just getting some exposure into what the junior audience demographic is like for the storyboarding and animation realm. So I served as a storybook artist, then worked my way up to a storyboard revisionist. And then during the pandemic, which was a serious time, and it's never lost on me how serious the pandemic was, animation sort of saw a bit of a leap in the abilities to work remotely and still get a lot of effective quality streaming material. So I was able to be bumped up to a storyboard artist during that time, and have been a storyboard artist ever since. And then came to Pubstruction. Pubstruction is just recently wrapped up its second season. And both of these shows are on Disney Plus. So if you have a hankering to watch some Disney Junior shows, please be my guest and go straight to Disney Plus. They're quite fun, even for the adult age. I saw a question about storyboards and how storyboards are made. So I'll give you a quick little background for any type of cinematic material. 9 times, 10 times out of 10, it begins as a script. So just some writing on a piece of paper that details environment setup, any kind of dialogue between characters, things of that nature. My job is essentially to take that script under the guidance, in this particular case for shows like TOTS and Pubstruction, under the guidance of a director or episodic director, pretty much guiding us in terms of how they want the episode to play out. We create boards. So the boards give the action, the boards set up the composition for each shot, the boards set up the emotion, trying to give as much information as possible without making it look unnecessarily pretty, if that makes sense, right? So we just need a clear understanding of how characters are moving, clear understanding of where props might be, clear understanding of where characters will be, obviously, and a clear understanding of how characters are emotionally engaging in the show. Sometimes you'll see that a lot more boards become a bit more animated in terms of just character movement. That really depends on a company's budget, but it also helps for the final stage of animation, which is that pretty picturesque image that you see on the TV. So when a storyboard has a bit more movement, it gives animators a bit more understanding of how, the creator of a show, how the director wants characters to move within a scene. So I will show you an animatic, right? So animatic is essentially a compile of all of those storyboards together in a timed moving sequence.
All right, Cody's Blanky's gotta be around here somewhere. Super Blanky! There it is! That baby dolphin found it! Blanky! Hi there, you cute little dolphin. Thanks for finding Cody's blanket for us. We'll just go ahead and get that back from you. Mine! Freddy, she thinks the blanket is hers. Super Ducky!
Super Darcy, stealing people's blankets. Yeah. So that was a fun episode to work on, right? So again, that was an animatic. Again, a compilation of those storyboards in the movement. To get deeper into what the storyboards look like, I will show you what a project file of mine looked like while it was being developed. So this is for obstruction specifically. And starting from the beginning, right? So I'm laying down, again, movements, character positions. We have an emotion here, so we get the sense that the character is feeling a bit stressed and duressed as he's flipping through his closet looking for the bow tie to wear, right? Character placements. So all of this is in Storyboard Pro. I'm sure there'll be more questions maybe about, the software that we use, but Storyboard Pro is the industry standard. But this is essentially what the file looks like as a board artist. So this is about 5 minutes worth of animation done with, I'll say roughly maybe anywhere from 600 to potentially 1,000 drawings. So it's exercise, it's work, but when you dig into it, watching the end result is really, really, really fun. And I truly, truly do mean that. My hand be hurting sometimes, but that's why we take rests. That's why we take breaks. All right. Get back to the presentation here.
We already have someone say, did you draw those yourself?
I did draw those myself. Watch that. So how did I really get here? The answer to that question can really be summed up into these two images right here. I don't know, I can't see nobody's hands, but The Rescuers Down Under was an animation that was released, I believe I have in the next slide, in 1990. If you have not seen The Rescuers Down Under, please do me the favor of going to watch that film. It is monumental, just a great story. And then beside that is a painting by a brother named Ernie Barnes, rest his soul. So I'll begin with The Rescuers Down Under. So it's one of the first influential animations I remember watching just as a kid. So I'm a 91 baby. This came out a year before I was born, but I do remember at a young age on that lovely little island in Jamaica, watching this film. It was just very much pivotal to see these great colors, just all this movement, all this action, and really what was just the basis of a good story. So it planted a seed of interest in me for quality core storytelling. Shout out to The Rescuers Down Under. And then this painting, I didn't want to put any information beside it. I'm mad I even put the title at the bottom because it just needs its own space to breathe. But Ernie Barnes was a former NFL player who then turned painter. And Ernie Barnes, I was exposed to his work, I want to say when I was in either a freshman in high school or in 8th grade in middle school, one of the two. But when I saw his work, what just drew me was the amount of stories you could tell from just one canvas. And if I credit The Rescuers Down Under for giving me a spark in just being an artist, I give Ernie Barnes and his work, as well as the work of Kadir Nelson, I give them the credit of giving me the desire to be intentional with my art. So not just simply making strokes and paints and colors for the sake of making strokes and paints and colors, which can be appropriate for any given reason, but also having intention behind the artwork. And I'm going to talk a bit more about that later on as well. So this is the very brief but important in between, not to mundane you with every single day and year within my particular life. But 2009 to 2013, I did my undergraduate studies at the University of Florida. From there, I went to the Disney College program, which was an adventure in and of itself. I'll get to that in a minute. And then as you'll come to find as a freelance artist, sometimes you got to get your hands dirty to pay the bills. So I spent some time in between my undergraduate years in the Disney College program until I got into the School of Visual Arts, working for Delta Airlines to help keep the lights on and put some ramen noodles on the table, if you know what I mean. So, oh, look at that guy. So that's me at University of Florida. Initially, when I started at UF, I fell under the guise that, I want to be an artist in my life, but I also don't want to be a starving artist. So from that particular experience, I tried my best to seek out getting an advertising degree. And truth be told, you can make it as a creative at the University of Florida if you want to do advertising. One of my colleagues at the school, actually, she's become, I believe, the head of her own advertising agency now. Great creative, very dope. But for me, it was a bit more of a struggle. So thankfully, I was still able to do some painting here and there. I did a fine art study at UF, but came to the realization after those 4 years that art is really what I wanted to do. Look at this guy with his Target earrings. Don't get the earrings from Target, y'all. It's not safe. At least not for me. My ears was turning green. So after UF, I sought out the Disney College program. And at the Disney College program, I'm looking up, research about it. I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be my door, my foot in the door for the industry. I'm about to be drawing every single day, X, Y, and Z. If you are under the assumption that I made this particular animation because I was in the Disney College program, the answer would be yes, but not because I was doing anything related to art at the Disney College program. I was a housekeeper. So the Disney College program was really a good program for those seeking to do things more involved with hospitality management, things of that nature. That did not stop me though from trying to get some information about how to potentially get into animation. Disney has, I believe they still have an in-house advertising agency known as Yellow Shoes. So I went to Yellow Shoes, found the building where Yellow Shoes was housed, and I was able to talk to some people who just worked in that arena, executive producers, some people who do graphic design, X, Y, and Z, still trying to get that animation route, thinking that might be the route to take. Didn't really end up anywhere, but I was so grateful to the people that gave me a tour of Yellow Shoes that I made this quick production. Yeah, so I think it's safe to say that that's probably my very, 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 very first full production animation. Let me tell y'all, the budget was real high. Had to get into my little bathroom and use my cell phone to record that little whistle, keep the sounding on the pulse padded. But that was the birth product of just my thankfulness to the people at Yellow Shoes for taking the time to show me around. And then after that, I'm going to talk over this video. So with the help of my parents, salute to my parents for being very supportive of my art desires. My pops was like, bro, you just need to move to New York and then just try to see what you can do up north in terms of being planted in the industry. So I moved to New York. I don't know if anybody's heard of a little airport called JFK. But I worked at JFK as a ramp agent. And if you're ever curious to know how the plane backs up when you're at the gate, that's how. There's somebody sitting in a little machine called a tug. That's your boy right there over here, just pushing this little plane back. And popular to contrary belief, pushing out the smaller planes is far more difficult than pushing out the big, massive wide bodies. So yeah, that's a little ramp education for y'all. But I'm at Delta, I'm doing Delta work, I'm working the ramp, and I have the benefit while being at Delta of still trying to figure out, okay, I'm in New York, I want to get in the animation industry, what should I do or how should I go about trying to make that happen? For me, the key was getting back into school. The time that I left University of Florida up until I got to New York, my portfolio was lacking and I didn't really have a good, clear understanding of what industry demands were, industry standards were, industry softwares were. So I scoped out the School of Visual Arts, which I knew from high school. I was exposed to some of the work that people did at the School of Visual Arts. And yeah, I found out about the MFA Computer Arts program. A little bit of a backup. So my first plan was to study to do visual narrative storytelling as the major for my master's. I applied for that. I did not get in, right? So there's some rejection as a part of my career story as well. So don't ever let that rejection, to give you that soapbox speech, don't let the rejection keep you down. Feel what you gotta feel, but be persistent. So as I'm continuing to take continuing education courses, somebody mentions to me that I might be a better fit for the computer arts program. So I applied to the computer arts program and lo and behold, I got in. 2017, I became a master's freshman at the School of Visual Arts. Shout out to SVA, shout out to MFACA for accepting your boy. And while I was there, I was exposed to pretty much a boot camp understanding of the entire animation pipeline from start to finish. And my end product of that program was my thesis film called Run Little Boy. All right, so throughout this entire process of making my own personal short animation, I'm getting to understand pre-visualization, production, post-production, all the things, budget, right? Remember I told y'all about my quote unquote high budget animation at the Disney College program? Yeah, nothing. All right, so now I have access to, industry level softwares. I have access to advisors who can give me some guidance in terms of how my camera should move, how my shot should be set up. During all of this, I am introduced to the position known as storyboarding. And what drew me to storyboarding was the mixture of animating and pre-visualization. You get to wear multiple hats. So I get to become the cinematographer of my film. I get to really focus on compositions. I get to direct all of this with using a loose hand in terms of drawing. I don't need to be too finished or too fancy with my strokes. I can make basic moving images, but still tell a profound story in a very what's the term, rough draft state. So Run Little Boy for me was a film that dealt with police brutality and judicial misconduct. And I always say this, my film was not at all intended to diminish or demean good cops, not at all. The intention of my film was to expose or just call out bad cops. That's really the breadth of what the film was about. All told through the perspective of a young boy. So here's one of the first sketches that I did for my main character, simply named Boy. And during this phase, I'm just having thought vomit, right? So I'm not thinking too much about cinematography at this particular stage, but I'm thinking about characters, what characters could look like. I'm thinking about my antagonist, what my antagonist may look like. I'm thinking, how could I sketch out potential plot points, things of that nature. Any kind of idea that pops up, I'm giving it just space to breathe so that as I go through the process of making this animation, I can then condense it into the story that is to be told. And get into some character designs. So this is a bit of a revamped character design of my protagonist, Boy. So this is just here to help me keep on model, to make sure that even though in my storyboards, I don't have to be as refined with my main character, when it gets to the actual animation portion, I need to make sure that my character looks consistent from start to finish throughout the film. Storyboards. So this is the part where I'm letting it all out now. So I'm getting an understanding of how I want the story to flow from start to finish. So what you're looking at is essentially beat boards. Beat boards are just major portions of the composition of the film. So this is essentially how I know I want my story to go from the beginning to the middle to the end, right? In the introduction, you have the moment where you meet the protagonist, and then you get to the segment where you meet the antagonist. You get to another segment where you meet another antagonist, and then you start to see the climax, and then the last beat board, of course, being the final shot, the end, as they say. And from those storyboards, I developed this lovely animatic. So the animatic phase was really helpful in terms of just getting a succinct understanding of how I wanted the timing to be, and also when I brought it to the final format to be animated, I got to use the animatic verbatim is the best word I can use to kind of help me figure out how my character's going to move through scenes, through spaces, things of that nature. Uh, Funny story. So this is 3 minutes and 30 seconds long. I presented this animatic to my thesis board, and they were like, "That's wonderful. That's great. That's far too ambitious. You need to cut that in half." So I was like, "Cool, I could do that." So I cut the animatic from this section here. So I took this scene out. I'll mute it. Mainly because I felt that this scene was more supplicative than foundational to the story that I was trying to tell. I thought it would have been a dope scene to animate first and foremost, but you come to realize very quickly how intensive and involved animation is. So the more movement that you have, especially with something as dynamic as that, and the character movements, the more you try to figure out, okay, how do I either cheat or can I tell the story and still have it be impactful without having this particular scene? So I knocked this shot out. Uh, Spoiler alert, my final film ended up being a minute and a half longer. So how that happened, I don't know. But we finished it on time, thankfully. So once I completed, and another thing with the animatic too, at least what I learned from this particular phase is I got some pointers in terms of having an understanding of intentional backgrounds, right? So sometimes you can have your character set up in spaces that don't make sense. So from this particular experience, I got great wisdom and advice in terms of having succinct and clear storyboards. Not that you ever need a background to be so clear and concise, but you need to at least have give your audience an understanding of what's going on, even if you're in the storyboard phase. So next came style frames. So this was the portion of the pipeline where I want to get a feel for, how do I want my colors to play out in my film? How do I want them to affect the tone or the mood of the story that I'm telling? Um, Also, I got to experiment with how I wanted the line to kind of move. I didn't want everything to be kind of stiff. Right, this is an animation, so I like that there's some kind of movement going on to give even the things that may not necessarily be moving in the animation themselves still have a sense of life and breath. And this is a bit of a nightmare environment, so everything, even though it may not necessarily have direct involvement and engagement with the main character, they still play a key role in the film as a whole. So after the style frame portion, we got on to the nitty gritty, the hard work, which was the final film. And I got to give a shout out to my sound designer, my composer, Melissa and Eric. They really did a phenomenal job on just helping to add that extra dynamic punch to the film in and of itself, and of course my family for their support. Run of the Boy. So at the beginning of my stint with the School of Visual Arts, uh, from the jump, they kind of let you know what the end goal is for you, which is a thesis film. And early on, I was trying my best to figure out, okay, what kind of story am I going to tell? So going back to that, bringing up Ernie Barnes, I knew SVA was a pretty big name school, still is, domestically and internationally. And so I figured if I'm gonna use my time here, I'd love to tell a story that actually also has some sense of impact and meaning. So going back to that quick discussion I had about intention, if I'm gonna make an animation and play to SVA, I want to be intentional about the animation that I make. And again, not to say that your intention always has to be um, hot and heavy, especially in regards to what RLB was, but that was the story that came to me when I was just doing a whole bunch of sketches and trying to figure out what kind of story I wanted to tell. So after finishing the film, I did a bit of a film festival tour. I was very blessed to have RLB be showcased in over 20 film festivals. I'm showing 6 here right now, but it did make it to over 20 film festivals, and I can dare say I can add the international stamp. There was a film festival out in Armenia that picked up the film as well and showcased it. They didn't offer me, to fly me out to the red carpet event, but that's okay. We need to humble ourselves. I'll get there one day. But this was truly just a wonderful experience, and also was able to pick up the best animation award as well. This was a complete solo project in terms of production. So again, shout out to my sound designer, shout out to my composer. But in terms of the actual production in of itself, it was all done by one hand. These hands, that wasn't intentional. I was looking for some help, but given the nature of SVA and just at the time the film was being made, everybody was trying to get their own work done, which is understandable. So some serious labor of love went on to make this film, and some definite sleepless nights. But that was the end result. And spoiler alert, your boy graduated on time, got the degree and everything. So some of my favorite cohorts that I went to school with, that I walked the halls with, all of them are not here, but this was just a handful that I got to take a picture with. So my master's experience at SVA was really beneficial. I cherish it very much. So post SVA, let me pause for a second. Post SVA, so again, up until this current point now, I'm serving as a storyboard artist in the industry. I'm in between projects right now. So when you're in between projects, it's always usually best that you find more projects to work on, because again, the lights won't keep on themselves. The lights won't keep themselves on, part of my English. So I was able to get some work lined up for clients who unfortunately I can't show some of their work today because of NDA agreements. But this particular one specifically, shout out to Miss Janine Whitfield, who was a former, I believe she still is, involved with the Heidelberg Project based in Detroit. She made a book about her husband, Tyree Guyton, who pretty much established the Heidelberg Project. And she made a book called Yerit Nutyog, which was Tyree Guyton's names kind of mixed up and jumbled up. So after writing that book, she wanted to take the book and make it into some sort of animation. I believe there's still a desire to do so, but this was one of the animatics that she let me create after taking some time to read the book that she wrote. And there is no sound. That was a very fun project to work on for multiple reasons. The main reason being, so I'm coming off of a Titmouse contract, and of course, to do the 9 to 5, you got to go under the guise of a director. So not that you're limited in your creativity, but some freelance work like this allows you to kind of take the helm as director again. And much of the heavy work was already done for me in terms of a character design. I didn't need to really do a character design because Ms. Whitfield already had a character ready. So she gave me bullet points in terms of the story that she wanted to tell, and just essentially said run with it. So I ran, and that was the product of Yerit Nutyog. Very fun project. This next project was a bit outside of my norm. It was more animation focused, but two wonderful people by the name of April Sweeney and Sauda Jackson reached out to me in regards to a project they were working on, just called I Digress. It was essentially just a retelling of the main character and the writer, who is Sauda Jackson's story, just about her life. And in this particular episode, she focused in on the relationship between her mother and her father. This was animation work I did that involved rotoscoping. For those who don't really know what rotoscoping is essentially tracing frames within existing, films. And you can, for me, it was rotoscoping involved with a little bit of experimentation to just give some added life. That's what they desired to the existing film as it stood. So.
Those are my parents on their wedding day. They were acrimoniously divorced when I was approximately 4 years old. One birthday, my dad decided to show me the film of their wedding. It was the summer of '69. My dad looks as if he's auditioning for GQ, and my mom looks as if she could say, "No, if I can find North Star, I can make my way to Canada." It was such a raggedy relationship, and by the end, all I can remember is banging, yelling, crying, and running. My mom, their breakup was beyond messy, and my mom tended not to discuss it often, but when she did, it was constructive and very adult. Probably is not to freak me out because I was an easily freaked out kid. But after years of living with her, the one thing I did figure out was that she had a physical type: dark skin, masculine, athletic, socially conscious, and smart. My dad was striking, athletic, charming, artistic, and difficult, from what I could gather. And she married him. Some of the list is better than none at all, I guess. My dad. I've always thought that his world is kind of what matters to him. My stepmom described him best once. She said, "Well, sometimes Wendell lets you talk and you can see he's just waiting for you to finish so he can go back to talking about himself." Oh, I find that to be true. To be fair to him, he's an actor and a stellar one. So self-absorbing issues might be his thing. His recall of my conception was polar opposite to what my mother said. He basically said she had finished up her master's degree and really, in their soul, it was time to have a baby. I was like, sure, okay. Look, I have no idea what connected them, maybe just life's choices. I'll never be clear on why they stayed, and praise the heavens they divorced.
So again, the project a bit outside of my comfort zone, to be fully honest, but a nice challenge. And also I got to animate in Photoshop, which can be extremely tedious, but Photoshop does provide some nice bitmap style brushes. If you have any questions about that, please feel free to ask. I'll be happy to answer all of those questions. And then post that particular project, making sure I try to find some time to do my own personal fun stuff. Go to my Delta days. Yeah, so I was on Instagram, and there's a dope artist. I'm about to say this wrong. Forgive me, Uchioma. He did a variation of this with the same music and the same theme of just this shifting time. So I used my Delta experience to kind of make my own personal version. And that was fun. That was fun. So that is my story. I appreciate y'all for listening. again, whatever questions you may have, I'll be very happy to answer. And that's it for me.
Thank you so much, Dominic. Thank you for sharing.
Pleasure, pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. That was a fantastic presentation. So insightful.
Yeah, amazing picture of your journey from beginning to end with the bumps and even like working outside your comfort zone. I love how you talk about that, trying something new, and just such a clear picture of what a storyboard artist does. And there's so much involved. I know I have questions, but I know everyone else here has questions. So please, please, if you have a question for Dominic or even just a comment, feedback, please put it in the Q&A. We have, just for some immediate feedback, that was dope. And Nina kind of has some emojis for you of that, like, oh, and the celebration. I know that came up during I think your Run Little Boy project. And then we've got some questions coming in. So from the very beginning, Tony wanted to know, being that the animation industry is so competitive, do you think that getting that master's degree was helpful to get your foot in the door? Because I know it's not everyone's path.
It's not. For me, it was helpful just because I didn't necessarily know where to look or where to begin in terms of job hunting. And also for me, my portfolio needed all the work. I was essentially starting from the bottom. Um, so if you're somebody who feels like they thrive better in a systematic and structured environment, then I'm all in support of school, with the full understanding that school ain't cheap. For I don't know. For me, the answer goes both ways. I know for me personally, it was necessary to build myself a portfolio and also get exposed to different companies and within the animation industry in and of itself. Uh, with that being said, if you are somebody who is very self-driven, very self-motivated, able to do all of those things without a school environment and do all the research, full steam ahead. You don't need to. Instagram is one of the best resources you can use in terms of networking. So is LinkedIn, so you can build those connections yourself without having to necessarily go to school. So it can work both ways.
Mm.
Answer the question.
That's great insight that you knew that you kind of still needed to grow in that way.
Oh yeah.
Mhm. All right. Carolina asks, hi, Dominic. How did you keep yourself motivated in searching for your dream in the animation industry while working full time at a different field? And follow up, how did you handle the obstacles along the way?
Hello, Carolina. Great question. When you are out working at John F. Kennedy International Airport, which I call the Northeastern Zoo, just because of how many people traveling there, combined with the fact that you're working out there in the wintertime, freezing, kind of helps you put things in perspective in terms of where you want to go and where you don't want to stay. So that knowledge was very much inspiring. Aside from that, I always knew I wanted to do art. So I just maintained the vision, and the vision was always to just be involved in some art space specifically. So I made the decision before I even began at Delta to pursue getting my master's at SVA. So I just held on to that with the reality of understanding that I may not get there tomorrow. It may take some time. Um, so just being consistent, even on the days when I just didn't feel like getting up, being consistent in understanding that this is a process that I need to commit myself to. It wasn't just going to fall into my lap. And motivation also for me came from community. I had a close community of people who knew what the goal was for me. Thankfully, I never deterred myself so far away as for them having to like slap me up and get me back on the right track. But for the days that it's hard, I had a good community around me to support me, and they were saying, this is just again part of the process. So stay true to the game, stay true to the desire. And then also another element for me personally, I'm a man of faith. So I had my discussion with God in terms of, what I wanted to do. I also had to be understanding of God's timing, right? So everything again does not necessarily happen on the timing that you want it to happen. But again, maintain that persistence in trying to stay true to the vision. There was a follow-up.
The follow-up was, how did you, oh, sorry, Shane, how
No, you're
did you
good.
face the obstacles along the way during that time?
I just faced them. Oh yeah, it's and I'm not gonna sit there and say I faced them with a smile on my face. Sometimes some getting up is half the battle. So even if you get up with a frown, still get up. If you get up with a smile, it makes it a lot easier if you get up with a smile, but just getting up. And I really do have to shout out again community. So if it helps big time if you surround yourself with trustworthy friends, trustworthy family, whatever the case may be. It don't got to be a whole number of people. It can be just one person who will help pour into you when you feel a little bit empty in regards to those dreams and pursuits that you're trying to maintain. So community help big time.
Awesome. And Nina had a similar question, like, was it hard to find the balance during that time? So, did you find that you balanced building your art career while also working at a non-art related job that took up a lot of your time?
I could have done that better if I'm being honest. I made it this far, so there was clearly some success there, but I was not the best steward of my time. And that kind of goes back to maintaining a positive attitude. Things were not happening on my particular timeline, and sometimes I find myself really depressed about that. So I'd spend, call it a day or 2 days, wallowing in self-pity when those 2 days could have been properly resting. Those 2 days could have been properly, drawing for the sake of just drawing, right? Everything does not have to necessarily be focused onto this particular vision. You run into burnout. So the balance for me, I kind of called the groove of the balance. Even to this day, I'm still working on balance, but it was a work in progress, especially in the beginning.
Hmm. Thanks. Yeah, I think that balance is just an ongoing challenge, no matter what you're balancing. We have a lot of people in this space that are balancing school and work and other life responsibilities with trying to keep up their craft and their art. And I just think it's a lifelong dance.
Lifelong. And I'll say this in front of me as I'm presenting. This is my planner. Do I always follow it to the T? No, but if you're like me, you're not necessarily the best at organization. So it'll take the effort on your part to really organize and structure each and every day. You don't have to necessarily do it to the minute. You don't got to even do it to the hour. But again, vision. So if you know that there's something that you want to do, and you know that there are other things in your life that you have to get done, you have to go to school, you have to work, whatever the case may be, you got to find ways to make that time. Right? It's not just going to fall into your lap. So if you want to know somewhere to start, get you a nice little planner.
Nice.
That's great advice. Mohammed added, I don't have a question, but inspiration and motivation that the future you want can indeed be closer than we pictured and imagined. So Mohammed just expressing that, they're inspired.
Totally. We have a lot of feedback like that, very engaging. This was so much fun to watch.
Glad.
What?
I'm glad. Yay.
Yes, celebrating you and your journey. And Zainab said, the journey, the story, you found your future and are walking in your future. And there is no more of wondering what the future will be. This, for some reason, inspires me.
Yeah. I'm going to be truthful. The future is not clear cut, but at this particular point in time, what I will say is when you catch that groove, some days the groove feels like it's not necessarily there. But I'd be a fool not to sit here and look back on all the things that I've had to overcome to get to this particular point, right? So that in and of itself, especially on the down days, can really be encouraging. Self-talk is positive self-talk is so necessary when it comes to just any kind of pursuit. So it's been monumental for me to always remember, I put in the effort, and when you put in the effort, you get the reward. Sometimes the reward is not always what you hope or envision, but there's definitely a reward to your commitment to what it is you're trying to do.
That's great. Yeah, it's all part of the whole picture. I appreciate you sharing that. And what was your favorite, project you worked on? Someone had that question.
Favorite project. My favorite project is the next one. No, I'm joking. I stole that from an artist I spoke to. What was my favorite?
Right.
My most favorite recent one, to be honest, had to be that Delta joint, just because there was so much. I was talking to my homeboy earlier today about my experience at Delta, and he was like, "There needs to be a short film." And there was just so much to pick off of from that experience that I tried to capture in that quick little animation. That was a recent favorite. I know this is really cheesy, but there really is a fact. I'm not sure that I really have necessarily a like favorite above all, because the one beautiful thing about my particular position, there's never like a cap for growth. So every single project gives me something new to learn, even if it's a hard lesson. Like I need to change my character, I need to change my attitude. But to not be so serial boxy, that Delta project with the wands was a fun recent animation.
Awesome.
I like how that ties back into the balance you were talking about earlier. That that time at Delta was not at all wasted time because it inspired you later.
Even them cold days outside.
And then, you know, more technical question, Chris Starr says, what software do you usually use? And I think they missed maybe your story about school, but where you specifically learned those skills. But yeah, what are the softwares that you typically use?
So for me, for storyboarding, it's Storyboard Pro, Toon Boom Harmony. For Run Little Boy, the software I used for that to animate was Toon Boom Harmony. And then I'll be very honest, that last project that you saw with the rotoscoping, that was Photoshop. Even though it can be real tedious, if you're looking for something more bitmap brush based, so for those who don't know, vector lines are these very clean cut lines. The bitmap brushes can kind of give a bit more texture. Photoshop was really beneficial for me in that. There's another program called TV Paint, but that also costs money. So if it's between paying for Adobe Creative Suite and TV Paint, my finances right now is pointing towards the Creative Suite. But Storyboard Pro, Harmony, Photoshop, what else? Outside of my storyboard work, I'm trying to get some skills in Blender. So I'm taking a 3D modeling class right now. Blender is really dope, especially I'm a fan of Free 99. So Blender software is really, honestly, it's industry comparable for those who are interested in 3D stuff. And that's my short spiel.
That's awesome. That's great.
Um,
Thank you for giving all those options.
Yeah, thank you. I actually wanted to ask about when you mentioned Blender. Is that what you used for the 3D layouts in the storyboards you showed earlier, or was that given to you by somebody else in the pipeline?
So somebody else in the pipeline made the OBJs, but when I go into on one of my workstation, I open those up in Blender, move the camera around as I need to, and then go through that. I didn't build now one of those sets.
Okay, gotcha.
They're just yet.
And I had a question when you said 9 times out of 10 or 10 times out of 10, an animation starts with a script. Your film, did you start it, you know, with a written word, like writing the story? How did you actually start the process after you had kind of had the visual in your head?
It was a little back and forth. So it started off with just, again, those rough sketches. I even went as far as to, I didn't have it, I was trying to look for it. I went as far as to start a first version storyboard of just that running sequence of the boy running outside of his room. Hard stop right there. I began taking classes, and in those classes, we had to do the old school who, what, where, when, why.
Mm,
So that's really how the real foundation kind of began. And then from that, I wrote about a 2-page synopsis of how I wanted everything to go down. It was a silent film, right? So there was no dialogue, which also helped in animation because drawing moving mouths is very tedious. So that was intentional. But yes, it did start out as a 2-page written document.
interesting.
Very cool. I wanted to also ask a question. When you were talking about the first animatic for Run Little Boy, you mentioned cutting the sort of like Constitution treadmill section because it was more supplicative than foundational, and I was really drawn to that idea. Could you expand a little bit on how you determine what is supplicative and what is foundational in a project?
For that specific project, the dynamic of that rustle and tussle with the cop, who usually they're supposed to represent the law, or they're supposed to represent the Constitution and the rights that we do and the rights that we don't have and protections of those rights. So after watching the animatic and seeing that, I knew that particular portion of the film could not go anywhere, especially because of what led up to that particular scenario. So when the Constitution part came up with the conveyor belt, it was I did so badly want to see it finalized in the end, but it was enough. It was enough. There was enough information from that section within the cell walls that kind of made the, not to say made that next scene unnecessary, but again, more just, adding on to the word of what we've already just said within the first few minutes of the animation itself. So that's why I was comfortable with letting that scene, and also with the deadline and understanding how. But yeah, great question.
Yeah, thank you. That was really insightful.
Yeah, I think in a really relatable challenge of letting go of your own work. It's one thing to edit someone else's work, but to understand your time boundaries and to manage the project parameters and to have to say goodbye to your own art must be tough.
The funny thing too, before we begin this, I told y'all I'm a talkative person. Sometimes you'll find, especially when you don't let other people see your work, you're saying the same thing over and over again, and it's becoming a bit redundant. And if there's one thing I know I don't like when I hear other people speak, sometimes it's just unnecessary redundancy. So I wanted to avoid that, as to not, again, this is a topic that is not always so easily welcomed by people. So if I'm going to speak the truth, I'm going to speak the truth, point blank, period. However, I don't need to take a stick and beat it across your head unnecessarily. So.
That's great. So helpful. Christian said, I want to be a 2D animator and continue to work on my portfolio and keep applying to internships and job positions, but I can't seem to get my foot in the door. Do you have any advice for me? And, recognizing, I'll just add, like, the landscape of the job of the workforce right now, I think is in a tough situation too. So any advice?
Advice, just keep being persistent. If you want to take it a step further, and if you haven't done so already, go on LinkedIn and be intentional about who you're accepting or asking to be connected with on LinkedIn. See if you can find industry specific people within the area that you want to work in. And even look up recruiters that you can connect with on LinkedIn. And just network like crazy. Try to have conversations as often as you can. One of the reasons why, and I was told this, one of the reasons why I was able to land my internship and then job at Titmouse, while I'm brown nosing is not something that I would ever suggest to anybody, but showing gratitude to people that take their time to speak to you about your portfolio can really take you a long way. So when I did a college fair at the School of Visual Arts, I made about 5 thank you cards, and I said I'm gonna be specific about who I give these thank you cards to. It's based on the dynamics of the conversations that we had. And then one of the producers was like, I really like that thank you card. So thankfully he thought about me when it came to doing internships. So if you're networking, make sure that you're expressing, make sure you're following up, follow up with those people. And just keep creating. It's really easy to have 10 pieces in front of you and say, these are my best 10 pieces. Those 10 pieces can easily become 20 great pieces if you just keep growing, and you can even see the growth of the work that you're doing if you keep consistent in that regard. I feel you. I'm on the opposite side of it, so the pressure doesn't feel the same on this particular end, but I know that's a journey. So,
Very true.
So powerful to just note the long lasting effect, like something like gratitude can have, and those moments of connection that you make, and how important it is to just kind of keep putting yourself out there and keep showing your gratitude. And people remember those things, and we all do. So it's great. Thank you for sharing that.
Nina asked, is it hard to take breaks when you're really determined to see the final product of your work?
Sometimes, yeah. If I'm being honest, I think it's harder to take breaks when I'm under somebody else's deadline. But for personal work, I think it's easy to get lost in just the fun of what you're doing. And so if you find yourself getting lost in that, just get lost in it. Take a nap at some point, drink some water, eat. Of course, don't starve yourself. But I don't think it's hard to take breaks, just because, again, you become so enamored with the work that you're doing that you just swim in it.
Nice. And off the back of what we were just talking about, networking, it's not easy for everybody. So Chris Starr said, I'm not really a social person, but I've been told before that networking is important. So is there a way to make it easier? I'm very insecure when it comes to sharing, creative work.
I love this question. Thank you so much. So first of all, you need to commend yourself because that's self-advocacy, right? So you need to be a self-advocate. Snaps all around. On the side, I teach at the School of Visual Arts career strategies. So one of the things I try to kind of gently hammer into my students' heads is becoming self-advocates with the full understanding that everybody is not very talkative like myself. And so what I will say is that networking is not a skill that you have to be born with. It is a skill that you can definitely learn. So if you are somebody who is not necessarily strong at networking, are you strong at writing an email? Start there. Are you strong at writing quick letters? You know what I'm saying? Start there. So find the little areas where you know you can win in terms of having a conversation with somebody. And above all else, so rejections are just a part of the industry as a whole. I got rejected from a program I applied to last week. I took my day to cry the next day and then got up the following day after that, right? But one thing I wanted to make people understand, especially about this whole art thing, your worth and your value is not tied to what you do or what you don't create, first and foremost. So when you get a rejection, if you're networking, receive that as just that, a rejection and an opportunity for growth. But again, no tie to the person of who you are and what you're doing and what you're trying to achieve in the industry.
That's so powerful. Thank you. And thank you for that question. Yeah, you're here, right? That you are here and you articulated that so well. So it's a great step in making connections. Thank you. And any other questions, please put them in the Q&A. We had a lot of comments that this was so much fun to watch. A lot of things you said were very relatable. A lot of just kind of like pulling nuggets of inspiration from your presentation already. Spoiler alert, we were going to ask that at the end, but Mohammed said, based on your story, this has proven that there is no need to fear the future, but linger for it.
Stick around, see what happens.
Yeah, that. Chris Starr, who had just noted that they have trouble with networking, said, I have the same goal as you, want to get a job in creating things or just art related things. And Carolina said, thank you for sharing your insights, Dominic. I noticed that you were smiling throughout the presentation, even when you were talking about the rejection you faced in the master's application process. Thank you for bringing so much positive self-talk and energy.
Pleasure, my pleasure. And trust me, I know I'm smiling now. I wasn't smiling when I got rejected, but when again, yeah, just it's part of the process, and it really does teach you how to put the proper things in perspective, right? I'm still a good artist at the end of the day. What they needed, I just don't have at the particular moment. So keep pushing, keep pushing.
It's a great way of looking at it. Thank you for all this feedback and comments. Someone wants to know what that planner was because it looked really nice.
See if I can find it. Got it off Amazon randomly. I don't know who, and of course, there's no like publication information about it. But any wonderful planner will do. I personally don't like rings in my books, so I look for bound planners, and I also as much writing space as possible. Just because I'm also a sketcher, so yeah, just a good old fashion planner. Yeah,
It's such a good tip to kind of know like what feels good to you, what type of page format, it's a great tool.
Yeah. Tony, who actually asked the planner question, also asked, on the note of networking in the industry, how do you keep track of all the people you meet? I'm working on remembering names, so I would appreciate any insight you may have.
Only I'm trash with names. So if it's one thing I know who I anticipate wanting a response from, and I know who I'm gonna follow up with. So that kind of helps me understand or keep tabs on names. Also, email is very helpful because you can't forget somebody's name when you do email correspondence. If I know I'm going somewhere to meet somebody in person, I probably might recite their name in my head like 10 times. So that could be helpful. But I don't. Yeah, that's interesting. That's just grace. I'm not sure. I'm not trying to answer that question. Well, yeah, if it's email correspondence, yeah, clearly that's gonna be easy for you because the name is already right there. So yeah, and if you forget somebody's name, it's never. I don't think it doesn't say anything bad about you. Just hey, I remember we had a conversation. Please remind me of your name, X, Y, and Z, right? So
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, we've all done it.
thanks.
Um, a question about your film. Who's the little boy based off of?
The little boy was based off of, funny enough, so in the process of thinking about the film, the ending was the first thing that kind of came to mind, which was the multiplication. Tupac, in a freestyle rap battle he did with Biggie Smalls, said, I won't repeat all the lyrics, but no matter how you try, we never die. We just retaliate with hate and then we multiply. They didn't want the hate element, but the multiply element was very much resonated with me just because of the resilience of the African American story as a whole. Um, I myself, though I don't necessarily, I may not have ties to African American enslavement, probably West Indian enslavement, um, but there's a resiliency to the Black story as a whole when you consider the nation of America, and so Boy was based off of that resiliency, just the personification of that resiliency. So not necessarily one particular person. Um, the saddening thing about Boy was that people were able to watch Boy and connect him to people who had already been murdered. And then following that, following the finishing of the film, George Floyd happened the following year.
Hmm.
And a lot of people kept calling me, and the film was aging in a way that was truthful to the situation, but just doesn't necessarily feel good to have a film age like that so relevantly, if that's even the right word to use.
Mm.
Short answer to the question, just the boy was just resiliency personified.
Hmm. Wow. And how about the choice to give the policeman two heads and the judge as a baby?
So the policeman to me was racism personified and the duality of racism in terms
Mm.
of picking a particular group and being blind to the wrong that they do or being colorblind in essence. And then the other head with the shades on, knowing exactly who you plan on targeting. So that's why the cop had two heads. And then the judge in infancy, just because so much of the law operates in ways how people want the law to work for them. It that was just it. Sometimes when it comes to lawmaking, especially within the judicial system, it just seems very infantile in terms of how double standard, how it operates on double standards.
Wow, so much, it's just so powerful and like speaks to the power of animation using symbolism and metaphor and just the freedom that you can really send such a poignant message and paint such a powerful picture with in those creative ways. Whereas like film, live action film doesn't always build that space for you in the same way.
Right. I was very happy to hear you expound on that because especially the two-headed cop I thought was such a powerful visual metaphor, and like Natasha was saying, like feels appropriate specifically for animation. Is one of my favorite things about the film.
Appreciate that.
Great. Well, Matthew said his animation skills and skits are chef's kiss without a doubt.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate everyone. We do have a few minutes for a few more questions if anyone has any. Continue to put them here. This is a space for all of you to really share your own personal experiences and what you want to ask Dominic about his.
I'm a feedback man, so if you got criticisms too, throw them in here. I'm all for it. I'm all respectfully. I want to cry when we get off. But yeah,
Yeah, that was in our creed. We can keep it respectful for sure. A lot of favorites questions, like, do you have a favorite animator, favorite thing about animating?
oh, the favorite animator question. I have a list. Uh, some of my favorite storyboard artists definitely go to Chase Conley. And even before that, some of my favorite artists. There's so many, but one who I didn't get to talk about a lot was I mentioned in the beginning was Kadir Nelson. Kadir Nelson was another one that just spoke to me about intention when it came to art. Dang. back to I think it was Tony that mentioned forgetting names. I'll be forgetting the names of even the people that I like getting inspiration off of. But yeah, Kadir Nelson and Chase Conley are two top tier artists for me. One from the oil paint fine art realm, one from the animation industry. I believe people should be familiar with Chase Conley. He did some work in the X-Men '97 series that just came out. Yeah.
Nice. And whoever it was that animated Rescuers Down Under, that must be a
Well, yeah, for sure. And another thing, I didn't learn this until later on in life. The Rescuers Down Under, if I'm not mistaken, was the first 2D film that incorporated 3D elements.
Oh, wow.
Whoa.
Yeah, so Disney was doing big things, big things. Yeah.
That's all of our homework tonight is rewatch or watch Rescuers Down Under.
Yeah, I'm gonna go watch it immediately. I've seen the first one, but not Down Under.
Yeah, and for me, I saw that one first and then saw the first one. Bad decision, because the first one to me was just like, but yeah.
Wow, cool.
To be fair, I do think the first one was a great door opener for the second one. So yeah.
Cool.
And then what's your favorite thing about the work, about animating, storyboarding, illustrating?
Everything about animating, storyboarding, illustrating. Trying to get out of cheesy but truthful answer. But I mean, cheesy, it is what it is. So I went to UF, right, to pursue some kind of career that would, pay the bills within a creative space. That wasn't the case for advertising. To be here now and to be able to sustain semi, decent living as a storyboard artist is just that thought when I wake up every day and people ask me, "What do you do for a living?" I'm a storyboard artist, and everyone's like, "Whoa, first of all, what's that? What do you do?" So being able to say that I make my living as an artist is one of the things that I really do enjoy. And I really do love drawing. Do I like drawing, the same thing every single day for my 9 to 5? Not always. Sometimes I gotta take my 2 cups of coffee, get in the high gear and do what the job demands. But the fact that this gift of drawing is what kind of fuels my bread and butter, that's very much enjoy that.
Beautiful. Did you like drawing as a young kid? Like, was that something you always did?
Always did, yeah, always did. It's funny though, when I was in elementary school, you couldn't catch me coloring for nothing. My teacher used to be like, "You need to color that drawing," and I'm like,
Wow.
yeah. But now I have very much understanding of the power of color and the need of color.
Huh. But it's like you were storyboarding even back then, like just with the lines.
Always drawing. My mother, she was actually watching when she came off, so I can tell a mother story now. But my mom, she used to. I was a wild child, misbehaving, mischievous, all the types of words. So she just always remembers if you wanted to sit Dominic down, give him a pen and paper, and he'll be quiet. So yeah, drawing, calm me down.
And do you use a drawing tablet? Someone asked.
I use a Cintiq. I don't know if I can. There we go.
Yes.
Not a Cintiq, excuse me. This is a Veeq. I don't have Cintiq. The prices were killing me. So I found industry comparable hardware by a company called Veeq, VEIKK. So that's my tablet that I use for my 9 to 5.
VEIKK. That's good. Nice. So we are going to wrap up, but you talked about the future and not being afraid of the future and what's next. So I wonder what is next for you.
So I'm in between projects right now. I'm doing my best to revamp my portfolio, update my portfolio. I am also, easier said than done, I'm trying to prioritize my rest. You can be ineffective at resting, which is what I consistently find myself doing. So I'm trying to take proper rests. But right now, in terms of the creative space, just taking this time to try and draw things from the heart, from the mind that I personally want to get out there. Being patient with myself if I don't get everything done. I'm not Superman. But we are building up the current brand. So that's what I'm doing right now.
Amazing. Building that brand is important.
Yes, it is.
Wow. Thank you so much, Dominic. What an incredibly insightful, inspirational you know, and just for your honesty, thank you for really bringing your whole self to our community today. We already have some reflections that people really loved your presentation, so we have so much gratitude for you.
I appreciate y'all. Can't be fake out here. Gotta be real. Gotta be honest. So,
Yeah,
y'all, thank you.
absolutely. And we will move into our closing, and you know, thank you all for coming. Thank you again, Dominic, for being here. We put your links in the chat, so everyone in the audience, please scroll up and check out Dominic on his LinkedIn and website. Stay connected. You know, you're now part of the TAP community, so you're here, and we won't let you go.
If you message me and I don't respond immediately, give me time. I will get back to you. I promise. I promise. I promise.
Awesome. That's really, really generous of you. Thank you. All right, well, we're going to close out with our closing ritual. Shane, should we get into that? And our closing ritual is, what's one thing that you want to take from today's presentation? And whether it's a word, a moment, a nugget that you're walking away with. We started this session with, what do we hope to gain? And maybe we're coming away with that. Maybe we're coming away with something we didn't even think we needed. So please feel free to drop in the Q&A. What is one thing you're taking away from today's presentation? Just kind of letting it all soak in. And we can share ours too.
Yeah, I'd say one thing I took was just recognizing that it's a process, like you were talking about earlier, and kind of calling back to now when you were talking about the future, just like recognizing that it's about keeping the intention set and then being patient with yourself and with the world. Mhm.
Patience is a thing.
Yeah, it's a
Abby says, never give up.
Zoe
Zo-
said, sorry,
No,
to-
go ahead.
to make your work your own. Love that.
Matthew says, never let someone else downgrade you or your progress.
Sadria is taking away, determination can take you a long way.
Shyla says, don't be afraid to pursue your dreams just because you can't see them clearly.
Tony, stay positive and know your purpose, even when it comes down to the preferences you have for a planner.
Toma says, the confidence of the speakers, and take that confidence and use it in my everyday life.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for that gift of confidence, Dominic. Nargis, don't listen to haters because you're better than that.
Say that again.
Harris and Tyler also commented on confidence and determination.
Nice. And another more determination. Tyler said determination, being confident in what you do. Yeah, I'm personally also taking away that, you know, those rejections, separating those from our self-image and our level of self-worth. I think that's really sticking with me. Selena said rejection is just a roadblock you'll need to drive around.
Johnny says, keep an open mindset and do your best.
Yeah, Nina, I took away that it's important to stay consistent, and every stop you make on your way to where you want to be isn't a waste of time.
Muhammad says, rejections are bound to happen in life, but it's about how you cope with it.
Cleanna, I want to take all the insight given to me, and it makes me want to keep going and not give up.
Carolina says, simply stay true.
And Christian said, keep moving forward no matter how hard the road may be. Well, I hope you really let all those takeaways sink in from what you offered our community today. Really makes a huge impact to have you here. So thank you once again, Dominic.
Appreciate y'all. I appreciate y'all. Y'all got me tearing up a little bit. Yes, yes, yes. So all the best on your journeys, wherever it may take you. And thank you again, TAP, for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Of course.
Thanks so much, Dominic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thank you all for being here and for all your thoughtful questions. Thank you again to Dominic and everyone at TAP who made all of this possible. And if you want to join a TAP group, take a picture of that link right there. It'll send you to our website, which is always updated with all of our new programs. So check that link out to learn more about our upcoming groups.
We hope you all have a wonderful afternoon. And as always, stay connected. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.